My name is Amber, and the day my life split in two started in a parking lot beside a highway motel. We were supposed to be on a family trip. One of those trips people post smiling photos from later and call quality time. My mother had planned it like it was a project. Matching snacks in a cooler, printed hotel reservations, a list of stops along the way. She kept saying this trip would help us reconnect as a family. Instead, it became the day they left me behind on purpose. I was 17. We had stopped at a motel for the night and were loading the car the next morning when I realized I had left my wallet in the room. That was it. Not drugs, not running away, not stealing, not screaming at anyone. I forgot my wallet on the dresser because I was tired and distracted and still half asleep. When I said I needed to run back and get it, my mother snapped like something in her had been waiting all trip for a reason. "You always do this," she hissed. "You expect everyone to stop their lives and clean up your mess." I said I was sorry. I even laughed a little because I thought she was just being extra dramatic, the way she always was when she wanted to prove a point. I said it would take 30 seconds. She stood there with the car keys tight in her hand, eyes hard. "Maybe if we leave you here for a while," she said, "you'll finally learn responsibility." I still thought she was bluffing. I said, "Mom, come on." She got into the car, the doors shut, the engine started. For 1 second, I really believed they would stop, that someone in the car, my father, my older brother, anybody, would say, "Enough, this isn't funny." Nobody did. The car pulled away. I stood there with my backpack hanging half open and watched the taillights get smaller and smaller until they disappeared around the curve of the road. That was the moment something inside me changed shape. At first, I did not cry. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the road like maybe if I waited long enough, they would turn around. I kept listening for the sound of the engine coming back. 1 minute passed, then 5, then 10. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One text. Figure it out. That's how you learn. That was it. "No, we'll come back in an hour. No, stay put. No, we love you. Just that." That was when my hands began to shake. Not dramatic shaking, not movie shaking, just a deep tremor that started in my chest and moved out to my fingers, like my body had finally accepted what my mind was still trying to deny. I sat on the curb with my backpack and opened my phone. The first thought I had was call them. The second thought was don't. If I called and begged, then they would win twice. First by leaving me, and second by making me come crawling back to them for rescue. So I opened my Maps app and searched for the nearest bus station. If they wanted me to figure it out, fine. I would. Just not in the way they expected. The bus station was about 40 minutes away on foot. The sun was high and mean. My shoulders burned under the straps of my backpack. Cars rushed past me on the road, all of them carrying people who had no idea that one girl walking along the side of the highway had just been quietly dropped out of her own family. As I walked, I replayed everything. The lectures, the comparisons. The way I was always the difficult one in the house. My brother forgot things, and it was because he was busy. My father lost his temper, and it was because work was stressful. I made one mistake, and suddenly it was proof of my character. By the time I reached the bus station, my feet hurt, my throat felt dry and raw, and the truth had started to settle in. This was not really about a wallet. It was about power. The ticket home cost less than I expected. I had enough cash in my bag for that, a bottle of water, and maybe one meal if I was careful. I stood at the counter, looking at the route options on the board. I could go home. I could get on a bus, go back to the house, and wait for them to act like this was some hard lesson that had gotten a little too serious. Or I could go somewhere else. And that was the first real choice that belonged only to me. I bought a one-way ticket into the city instead. Not home. Never home. The city was loud when I got there. Loud and anonymous and huge. At any other point in my life, it would have terrified me. But that day, the noise felt useful. Nobody knew me there. Nobody knew who I was supposed to be. I found the cheapest room I could afford in a motel that smelled like bleach, old smoke, and something sour trapped in the carpet. The room had a flickering lamp, an air conditioner that rattled like it might fall out of the wall, and one chair that looked like nobody should sit in it. I lay on the bed fully dressed and stared at the ceiling. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no apologies, no one checking if I was alive. That was when the panic finally hit. Real panic. The kind that claws from the inside. What was I supposed to do now? Food, rent, work, school. I had no plan. I had just a little money and a backpack. But under the panic, there was something else too. Anger. Cold, steady anger. The next morning, I got up, washed my face in a bathroom sink with cracked tile, tied my hair back, and walked the streets looking for work. I checked every window for help wanted signs. Grocery stores, clothing shops, fast food places, nail salons, laundromats, anywhere that might not ask too many questions. That was when I saw it. A small coffee shop squeezed between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. There was a handwritten sign in the window. Part-time help needed. No experience required. I stood there for a full 10 seconds before going in. The bell over the door rang softly. Warm air and the smell of espresso wrapped around me. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 30s with tired eyes and a face that looked kind even before she smiled. "You here for coffee or the sign?" she asked. "The sign," I said. She looked me over, not in a cruel way, just noticing. Wrinkled shirt, backpack, tired face, the look of someone holding herself together by force. "You ever work in a cafe before?" "No." "You a fast learner?" "Yes." That was the truth. If there was one thing years in my family had taught me, it was how to adapt quickly. She nodded toward a small table near the back. "Sit for a second." I sat. She came over with a cup of coffee I hadn't asked for and set it in front of me. "My name's Sarah," she said. "Now tell me what happened." I had not planned to tell her anything, but the words came anyway. Maybe because I was exhausted, maybe because she asked like she actually wanted the answer. I told her about the trip, the wallet, the parking lot, the text. She stared at me for a long moment after I finished. "They left you there," she said slowly. "Yes." "On purpose?" "Yes." Her face changed. Not pity, anger. "People like that," she said quietly, "do not deserve the version of you that comes after this." I still remember that sentence. A stranger had met me 10 minutes ago and was already treating me with more care than my own family had. She hired me that day. The job was part-time at first. Early shifts, cleaning tables, taking simple orders, learning drinks, wiping counters until my wrists hurt. I said yes to everything because I had no room in my life for pride. That night after closing, I sat in the back room beside a tower of supply boxes and looked at my blank phone screen. Still nothing. I opened the notes app and typed one sentence: "Day 1 of my life without them." I did not know then that I would keep writing. The coffee shop became my anchor. The hiss of milk steaming, the clatter of cups, the sound of customers talking over each other. The rhythm of work gave me something to hold on to. I rented a room from a woman who only cared that I paid on time and did not bring trouble home. I ate whatever was cheapest: staff sandwiches, instant noodles, bruised fruit from the discount shelf. It was not a good life, but it was mine. Nobody could take it away by threatening me with a lesson. Sarah taught me everything, not just how to make drinks and close registers. She taught me how to ask for what I was owed. Well, how to look landlords in the eye, how to say no without explaining myself. She never treated me like a charity case. She treated me like a person in transition. One afternoon, a customer came in wearing a jacket that caught my eye. It was patched and altered and weird in a deliberate way. I kept glancing at it while taking her order. "You can ask," she said finally, smiling. "It's cool," I admitted. "Did you make it?" "Sort of. I buy secondhand stuff and change it. People pay for unique." Unique. That word stayed with me. On one of my rare evenings off, I went into a thrift store and bought 3 ugly jackets for almost nothing. I took them back to my room, found a cheap sewing kit, and started experimenting. I cut sleeves, changed buttons, added scraps of fabric from old shirts. The stitching was uneven, the ideas were messy. But when I finished, each piece looked like something new. I showed one to Sarah in the cafe back room. She turned it over in her hands and raised her eyebrows. "You made this?" "Yeah, just messing around." "It's good." I laughed because I thought she was being nice. "I'm serious," she said. "Try selling a few." "Who would buy these?" She looked at me like the answer was obvious. Someone who wants something made by a person, not a factory. So we put 3 of them on a small rack near the register with a handwritten sign: "Custom reworked pieces." I watched those jackets all shift like they were on trial. The first one sold to a woman in her 20s who ran her hand over the sleeve and smiled. "This feels like somebody actually cared while making it," she said. I rang her up with shaking hands. That night. And I opened my notes app and wrote another sentence. Day 63, someone paid money for something I made. A week later, I started recording videos. At first, they were just for me in the staff room after a double shift. Me sitting on the floor in my rented room surrounded by thread and fabric scraps. Me saying things I could not say to anybody else. Day 27. Still here. Day 63. Sold my first piece. Day 104. They still haven't called. I saved them in a private folder and named it No Return. Months became a year. A year became 2. I moved out of the rented room and into a tiny studio with crooked floors and bad plumbing, but it had one huge window and enough room for a second-hand sewing machine. I found free business courses online. I learned about margins, sourcing, branding, customer psychology, social media, taxes, and growth. I worked cafe shifts by day and sewed at night until my fingers cramped. By 21, I was selling enough to cut down my hours at the coffee shop. By 23, Sarah had invested in my first real collection. By 24, we had an online store. By 26, No Return Studio was a real business, not just an idea. A real, growing brand with a small team, a warehouse corner, and finally a storefront. The name confused people sometimes. No return, they would ask. Like store policy. I always smiled and said, something like that. What I meant was this. There would be no return to the girl in the parking lot. No return to begging. No return to waiting for people who left. The only thing I kept from those years, besides my business, was the archive. The videos, all of them. The crying ones, the numb ones, the tired ones, the angry ones. Yeah, I never thought anyone else would see them. Then one day, my social media manager, Elise, was reviewing old brand content and asked, "What is this folder?" Nothing. She opened one anyway. It was one of the early videos. I was 18, exhausted, sitting in a staff room saying quietly into the camera, "They left me in a parking lot because I forgot my wallet." Elise looked at me. "Why have you never shared this?" "Because it's pathetic." "No," she said. "It's powerful." I shook my head. "It makes me look weak." "It makes you look real." I argued with her for a week, then another. I was terrified. Not of strangers, of my family, of what would happen if they saw themselves reflected honestly for the first time. But another part of me wanted the truth out in the world. So we made one video, a short documentary-style piece. An clips from the old archive. Voiceover from me. No names, no locations, no exaggerated music, just facts. The trip, the parking lot, the walk, the bus, the job, the brand. We posted it with the caption, "No Return." How being left behind built this brand. It exploded. Not in a slow way, in a violent internet way. Millions of views, duets, reactions, comment threads, debates, people calling it abuse, people calling it tough love gone wrong, people sharing their own stories of being kicked out, abandoned, taught lessons they never forgot. Orders doubled in a week, then tripled. Messages flooded in. I was left at a gas station when I was 15. My parents called it making me independent. Thank you for saying this out loud. One comment stayed with me more than all the others. Is there any price high enough to make up for being told you were disposable? I tried not to think about my family seeing it. But of course they did. The first hint came in an email from someone I did not know. "I think I know who your parents are," it said. "People at my office are talking." Then another, "This is all over your old neighborhood." Then the email I had known would come eventually. Subject: "We need to talk." It was from my mother. 8 years of nothing, and that was the first line back into my life. Her message was everything I should have expected. Shock, hurt, accusation. She said she was devastated I would make private family matters public. She said the video lacked context. She said people were being cruel. She said my father was under pressure at work and my brother was furious. And then she wrote the real reason. "Your story is affecting our lives, not we are sorry, not we never should have done that. Just, this is hurting us now." I sat back in my chair and almost laughed. That was the thing, wasn't it? Pain only became real to them when it finally reached them. She wanted to meet. I agreed, but on my terms. A private room above a restaurant. Public enough that no one would dare get too loud. Private enough for the truth. I arrived early and chose the chair facing the door. They came in together. My mother looked polished in that careful way women do when they are trying to hold on to dignity. My father looked older, heavier somehow. My brother looked annoyed, like this whole thing was an inconvenience to him. "Amber," my mother said, "you look different." "I am." We sat. No one touched the menus. My father cleared his throat first. "You've done well." My brother gave a short laugh. She built a business by dragging us online. I looked at him. Did I say anything false? That's not the point. It is exactly the point. My mother twisted her napkin in her hands. We didn't mean to hurt you. I stared at her. There are sentences so insulting they do not even deserve anger. You left me at a highway motel and never came back, I said. You did not call. You did not check if I was safe. You did not report me missing. That is not accidental hurt. Silence. Then my father finally said the part they had really come to say. We need help. Of course they did. His company had downsized. Debts had piled up. The house had been refinanced. After the video, people had started talking. Some clients had backed away. Things were complicated. I listened to all of it with the strangest calm I had ever felt. Because I had seen this scene already, years earlier, just with different people in different seats. Someone with power, someone in need, someone deciding another person should absorb the cost. You want money, I said. We need a bridge, my father replied. My mother reached toward me with both hands open. We're your family. For 8 years, they had not been. I leaned back in my chair. No, I said. I am not your rescue plan. I am not your second chance. I am not the person you get to throw away and then reclaim when I become useful. My brother muttered something under his breath. I stood. My mother's voice cracked. We're going to lose the house. And for a split second, something almost moved in me. Then I remembered the curb, the text, the bus, the motel, the first day of my life without them. I figured it out, I said. Now you can too. I walked out. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. A month later, another email arrived. Different tone this time. No denial, no accusation, just desperation. My mother wrote that they were close to losing everything. She admitted for the first time that they had failed me. She said she was asking not as my mother, but as a human being. Would you help us? I stared at the email for a long time. Then a memory surfaced. An education fund. My grandparents had started one when I was younger. It was never large, but it existed. After high school, I had asked once about college money and been told there wasn't any left. At the time, I had accepted it because I accepted everything back then. Now, I wondered. I called my lawyer, not because I wanted revenge, not exactly, because I wanted facts. He asked if there had ever been savings or funds in my name. I told him what I remembered. He told me to gather anything I could. So I did. Old birthday cards from grandparents mentioning adding to your school account. A bank form in a drawer from years ago. One tax note. Enough for him to start digging. And he found it. My grandparents had created a modest education fund for me when I was 11. My parents had drained it over time. House repairs, bills, debt. Maybe they told themselves it was temporary. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they thought I never would know. That was when the shape of the ending changed. I replied to my mother, if we talk again, wham, it will be with legal representation. And we will talk about the education fund too. If you want help, you will face all of it. Not just the part hurting you now. She wrote back within the hour, we'll come. We met in my lawyer's office. This time there was no restaurant, no pretending. Just a conference room with glass walls, a stack of papers, my lawyer at my side, and Sarah sitting behind me because she had earned the right to witness the end of this. My family looked smaller, walking into that room than they had looked in my memories. My father's shoulders were bowed. My mother's face was gray with exhaustion. My brother still looked defiant, but the sharpness had dulled. My lawyer slid the papers across the table. And these records show that funds created in Amber's name by her grandparents were used for household expenses over several years without her knowledge or consent. My mother whispered, we used it for bills. My lawyer nodded. That doesn't make it legal. My brother snapped. So what? She destroys us now over that too? Sarah answered before I could. She didn't destroy you. She survived you. That shut him up. My mother finally looked directly at me. What do you want? I had thought about that question for days, not emotionally, practically, legally, carefully. I want 3 things, I said. They waited. First, the house. My father blinked. What? You transfer it to me, full ownership. The debt gets refinanced under my company. I'll work out the rest. You move somewhere smaller. That house was maintained partly on money taken from my future. I want it back in a form that means something. He looked like he had been hit. That house is our life. So was that money. My mother closed her eyes for a second. What else? Second, you sign a statement admitting what happened on that trip. You left me there intentionally. It was not an accident. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not me running off. You left me and did not come back." My brother let out a sharp breath. "That's blackmail." "No," my lawyer said calmly. "That's documentation." I kept going. "Third, you sit down on camera and say it. Out loud. You say what you did was wrong. You say no child deserves that. I won't release it without your consent. But it will exist." My mother stared at me in a way I will never forget. Not angry, not defensive, just shocked. "You built all this from that day," she whispered. "No," I said. "I built this despite that day, but I am done pretending it didn't shape everything." They looked at each other. Then my father nodded once. "We'll do it." The signing took over an hour. Paperwork, initials, signatures, witnessing. Every scratch of a pen sounded louder than it should have. Then came the video. We moved into a smaller room with a camera set up on a tripod. Sarah sat in the back. I sat across from my parents. I started simple. "My name is Amber," I said into the lens. "This is a recorded statement." Then I asked my mother what happened that day. She cried almost immediately. Real tears this time, not angry ones. "We left you," she said. "We thought it would teach you responsibility. We thought you'd call someone. We thought—" She stopped and shook her head. "No, that's not true. I didn't think about what would happen to you. I was angry and I wanted control, and we left." I asked my father if he had tried to stop her. He said no. I asked if either of them checked on me. They said no. I asked my mother what she would say to another parent considering something like that. She looked straight into the camera. "Don't do it," she said. "You think you're teaching strength? You are teaching your child they are disposable, and you may lose them forever." When it ended, no one moved for a moment. Then my mother looked at me and said quietly, "I don't know if you'll ever forgive us." "I don't know either," I said, and that was the truth. A month later, I had the keys to the house. I walked through it room by room. The walls were bare, their photos were gone, their furniture mostly gone too. It echoed now. It looked like a shell of the life they had tried to protect by pretending I had never existed. I didn't move in. I turned it into something else. The downstairs became a work studio for no return. The upstairs became transitional housing for young adults who had been kicked out, abandoned, or left without support. I partnered with a local nonprofit. We renovated slowly and carefully. Every room got a bed, a desk, soft lighting, and a lock on the door. The first time we gave a key to a 19-year-old girl who had nowhere else to go, I thought my chest might split open. Because this was the opposite of what had happened to me. This was return, but on my terms. Eventually, with their written permission. I released part of the interview with my parents in a longer documentary about accountability, family damage, and what happens when hard lessons cross into cruelty. Their faces were blurred, their voices altered, just like I promised. Some people said I was too harsh. Some said I was too kind. Some said they wished their own parents would sit under that kind of truth for once. At night, sometimes, I still think about the parking lot, the sun, the exhaust, the sound of the engine pulling away. But that memory no longer ends there. Now it continues. It cuts to me at a conference table watching papers get signed. It cuts to a house changing ownership. It cuts to a young person opening a bedroom door with a key that says they have somewhere to stay. People ask me if revenge healed me. No, revenge does not heal. Not really. But accountability does something revenge alone cannot. It shifts the weight. For the first time, the consequences landed where they belonged. And maybe that is what real responsibility looks like. Not the kind my parents tried to teach me by leaving me in a parking lot. The kind I learned by surviving them. So let me ask you this. If the people who broke you came back years later asking to be saved, would you open the door because they were family? Or would you make them stand still long enough to finally face what they did?